In Diablo 2, new player guides are pretty uncommon these days, and most of the information you'll find will expect you to be level 90 with a huge stash of high runes. Today, we're going to do the opposite and walk through a Diablo 2 starter guide for the Necromancer. Is this the only low-level build that works? No, but it is one that will make going through normal, and heck, in this one's case, the rest of the game, a bit more straightforward and help you get an idea of one of the number of ways to play the class. First up, as usual, the housekeeping that is stats. As with the other casters, we want to get a little bit of early strength to use the gear we might find or need along the way. In Act 1, this means getting about 35 strength, and then by late Act 3 or early Act 4, reaching 60 strength, since this will let you equip most of the useful normal difficulty gear you'll find, or in the case of some of the select items, be within 1 or 2 levels of it being equipable at least. As far as the rest of your stats, most of your points should go into Vitality. If you plan to continue this character through the end of the game without resetting your stats, you'll want to avoid doing any points into Energy, but if you plan to swap builds in Nightmare or Hell, then a few points will not hurt, as you'll be burning through mana pretty quickly early on while building up your gear, though by Act 3, if you follow the equipment portion of this, you should be doing okay, and then in Nightmare you'll have access to resources that can put you in a place where you'll almost never have to worry about mana again or even drinking mana potions. Equipment-wise, our goal is consistency, so while there are some great Necro uniques and sets you'll be able to find, we're going to focus on what's extremely straightforward and easy to farm: rune words and shoppable items. Thankfully, this Necromancer is pretty simple and honestly can go through normal without really farming any of this at all if you want, but these items will make life easier, especially if you're struggling at certain points. In the armor slot, the usual recommendation of stealth is an obvious one, where you want to get 2-socket light armor such as leathers or breastplate, and put the runes Tal and Eth in them. These runes are easily obtainable from farming the Countess in her tower on players 1 a few times, and the armor itself is shoppable in Act 1 or 2 from Charsi and Farah respectively. This armor gives you faster cast, faster run walk, a decent poison resist for super cheap, and that's why so many guides use it. And also by putting it in light armor, you do not suffer from any of the stamina drain or the slowdown of having, heavier armors. In terms of the other slots, you have a few options. With rings, amulets, gloves, and boots, you're pretty much going to be looking primarily for resist, but in terms of jewelry, faster cast is also nice for this build as you level into the low 20s because you'll be using Bone Spear and such more often, and it will benefit from being a little bit faster. Belt-wise in normal, you're probably just going to be looking for the biggest belt you can get to hold more mana potions, plated belts being the earliest, usually appearing in Act 3 onward, providing 4 rows for potions. As with other accessory slots, resists are your friend here. When you get into Nightmare, you will have access to better options through crafting, but we'll cover that in the mid-level guides for this build. It's not really going to be something you're going to reach in normal. This leaves weapon, shield, and helmet. This is where divergence can happen pretty easily. I personally favor plus skills since I'm used to managing my mana, which means Necro Shields with plus skills and resists, Necro Wands with plus skills and faster cast, and a socketed helmet with 2 tier runes in it for a little bit of mana help. Or if I get an Orton Soul, I'll make myself a lore out of a similar helmet. If you find yourself struggling on mana, you can swap these out for shopped items with sockets as well. For example, you can shop Bone Spear Wands with sockets from Drognin in Act 2. This will give you 2 more sockets for tier runes, boosting your mana recoveries per kill from 6 to 10 per kill with just Stealth, the tier helmet, and the tier wand. In Nightmare, you'll start getting items that are significant upgrades from these, but for normal, this will more than cover what you need, since as I said, all of this just kind of makes it easier. It's not necessary to continue forward. You can do this build naked through normal, easy enough. With all that out of the way, thankfully the skills are fairly simple if not a little bit scattered, and that is Bone Spear and synergies with a few 1-point wonders here and there. My preferred setup is 1 point in Clay Golem, Golem Mastery, and Summon Resist for an easy to resummon buddy that also slows enemies, 1 point in Dim Vision for robbing ranged enemies such as Gloams of their ability to, shoot you, and 1 point in the required curses to get 1 point in Decrepify, which also further slows down enemies. When combined with the Clay Golem, can actually slow down bosses to an insanely slow crawl, with everything else going into Bone Magic, of course, with my preference being Bone Spear and Bone Wall specifically, though Bone Prison has some nice advantages too. I just prefer Wall's flexibility. The reason I like this setup of focus early on is it not only boosts Bone Spear's damage nicely, but each point in Wall or Prison boosts the damage absorb of Bone Armor as well, even more than the points in the base skill will. So it's not only making you kill faster, but it's making you much more durable to boot, which is a very nice combination. As far as mercenaries, it's fine to go with whichever seems interesting to you. Act 2 combat mercenaries are nice for prayer, but if you want a bit more control, you could go with Cold Act 1 or Cold Act 3 mercenaries instead. There really isn't a best choice in normal, since you have all the tanking control you would need with the Golem and Bone Wall, you do decent damage with your spells, and if you have a real weapon instead of a wand, you can even do a bit of tank necro action if you really want. And none of the normal mercenaries will kind of impact this in any great fashion. Though in Nightmare, an Act 2 Holy Freeze mercenary will generally work super well for this build, but that's a subject for another video.